It's time with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
JMU Nation, what's happening? Welcome to another episode of To the House. I am your host, Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice. I am joined by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, a.k.a. the EPA King. What's going on, Jack?
AKA in a sad, dark place after the last 24 hours of football. JMU loses. The Seahawks lose in a heartbreaking fashion to the New York Giants, your New York Giants.
Go
and
Giants.
They lost last week. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that, but sure. And then lost last week to Bennett Conlon's Detroit Lions. It's been a rough time over here, folks.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Seahawks can get on the right track, and hopefully our James Madison Dukes can get on the right track, because as you said, Jack, this was a very disappointing loss down in Monroe, Louisiana. I got to say, I was very, very disappointed. It was a tough tough game. And it's really hard coming into this and doing this job. Like, that loss made this so much harder. I mean, I've not been looking forward to this all day. I tried to rewatch the game this morning. I could not do it. Were you able to muster the strength, Jack, to watch it again?
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Check out the JMU Sports News Podcast with Bennett and Jack. New episodes drop in the middle of every single week, previewing the upcoming week and recapping the previous week. It's all part of the JMU Sports News Network, your home for To the House and the JMU Sports News Podcast. No. I'm not going to watch that game again. I'm not going to touch that game with a 6-foot pole again. I have the memories. I've dove in, whatever that word is.
Delved in.
Delved in. There we go.
No pun intended.
Delved in to the stats. And it's just more sad. Like, it's just, man, I'm not going to rewatch it. That was an ugly game.
Yeah, it was an ugly game. And so I got a couple of thoughts, though, as we think about this game and how it turned out, because obviously it was not the outcome we wanted. But I have a message, I think, for some of the fans. If you thought that it was playoffs or bust, then we got to sort of reevaluate expectations. And Jack, were you a playoffs or bust type of person?
No. Because I think conference championship is still the standard, the quote unquote standard is the standard. That's the hope. It is conference championship or bust. I think it is, in my view, but the college football playoff added such a fun layer to it all. And like, it felt like we had a team, especially putting up 133 points these last 2 weeks. We had a team that could make it to the college football playoff. It was going to be fun to follow along each week and be like, all right, Boise did this, UNLV did this, Army and Navy are shockingly amazing. Like, how do we slot into it? And playing that game the whole season. So it wasn't college football playoff or bust, but like, it was cool to think that this team could have been there, but now with the loss, it's all out the window.
Yeah, and listen, I agree with you. it felt like there was a lot more energy and excitement given the fact that maybe we had a chance to make it to the playoffs. But a couple of things I will tell you. First off, all of our goals are still out in front of us. I mean, to your point, the goal is to win a Sun Belt championship. That's something that we thought we would have had a chance to do the prior 2 years with the team that we had. And if you remember, we had some tough losses in those years as well, even though we still had an opportunity, again, if we had been eligible to win the conference championship. This game reminded me a lot like going down to, what is it, Statesboro, Georgia, to Georgia Southern after a 5-0 start. We're ranked number 25th or 24th in the nation, and we go down and lay an egg, especially on defense. I mean, we give up a gazillion yards of offense to them, and this game to me felt a little like that. So I want to say that all of our goals are still in front of us. And when you think about how everyone else felt this morning, there was a lot of shakeup in college football, and they call it a season for a reason, right? It is not, hey, week to week. It is literally, you got to do it week in and week out. How do you think Alabama fans feel today, Jack? What about Tennessee? How about Missouri? How about Michigan? How about Louisville? How about University of Southern California? So all these teams woke up with the same pit in their stomach that you and I woke up with today. Do you agree?
They did. It just, you got to beat ULM, man. Like ULM, maybe they're a lot better than we expected. Maybe they're better than we thought.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. You're not wrong. There was a lot of shakeup. JMU losing to ULM isn't going to be front page, above the fold, A1 type of stories because of all the other chaos that happened across the college football landscape. But man, you look at that, you come into the season, that's when you've circled and you say for sure it's a W. And I've been talking with some friends where it's like, well, if you told me we'd be 4-1 at this point in the season going into the Coastal game, that's a win. And it's like, yeah, but then being 0-1 in Sun Belt does hurt.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're exactly right. At the beginning of the season, you circle the ULM game and you say that is a game that we got to win. And unfortunately, that is just based on everybody's opinion. These guys had 73 new players in that locker room this year. And so this is not the same ULM team that won 2 games last year. And for what it's worth, they have the exact same record we do right now. They are 4-1. Now, to your point, I do agree that was a very winnable game. I do not believe that ULM beat us. I think that we beat ourselves in a lot of ways in that game, and we're going to dive into it in a second. But you know, I think I warned our listeners on the last episode that this was going to be a tough environment for us to go into and try to perform. I mean, I know that guy, that coach, Bryant Vincent, like he was begging and pleading and whining to the city of Monroe all week. Please come out because we need you. And I kind of got sick of it, like hearing him whine and beg for the people to come out. And then you turn on the broadcast and the stadium is completely empty. I mean, there's nobody there. I went to my son's cross country match on Saturday, and there were more people at the cross country race than were at Monroe, Louisiana in that stadium. Jack, I mean, did it appear that way to you on television?
It was empty. And we'll get into, I imagine, some of the penalties that came up throughout that game and being just flabbergasted at how you have 5 false starts called on you when it's a tiny empty stadium.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are definitely going to get into that because I think there was a little bit of gamesmanship around that as well. And I need your help with that because you got a little bit of the inside track, being that you were one of the illustrious marching Royal Dukes back in the day, right? So I definitely want to get your take on it. You know, the other thing that Bryant Vincent said, though, ULM's coach, he said in his post game that he felt disrespected by JMU. I don't know if you saw that. He said that there was a bunch of stuff that we had put on Twitter and that we were making fun of them. And now he said, who's laughing now? And I mean, I got to say, like, while I can respect the bulletin board material and you use that to get your team hype, man, I want to play these guys again. Like because I don't know if it was players. And Jack, have you seen or did you hear about anything that our players put online on social media about ULM?
I mean, maybe it was fans. Like I know on the JMU Sports News podcast, we went to the ULM preview portion, and Bennett was like, "They're not good. Like next, move on." And it's like the fans may have been joking about it, but I saw nothing about like the actual players, coaches, like team accounts, nothing like that. I mean, good for Brian Vincent. Find what the fans are saying and use that as bulletin board material. Won't be the first time that a coach uses, crazy fans on Twitter as bulletin board material, and won't be the last either.
Yeah, I guess, but bro, as a player, I don't care what fans say, right? It's like if the team puts some stuff on Twitter, and that's what I was curious about. Like, is our team out putting stuff on Twitter, talking about UL Monroe? That would be one thing, but who cares about fans, bro? I thought that was super weak. Now, again, the other part of it, though, I will say this. I don't know who our social media person is for JMU football. And I think they do a fantastic job. Like, I think our social media is like night and day, 10 times better than what it used to be. I love all the posts, but there was a post before the game on Saturday that I saw. And I promise you, I'm on Instagram. I look at my wife and I said, we're in trouble. We don't look like we're down there ready to play a football game. And I don't know if you know if it's if you know the one I'm talking about, Jack, but the first picture on it, I think, is Amar Thomas, and he looks like he's like doing a dance with his cell phone in his hand on the field, warming up, and it's in the caption says, "Doing our thing in the 318 or whatever the zip code is down there." Yeah, I hated that post. And I don't know who the social media person is at JMU. I think they do a fantastic job. I thought that was the absolute worst post on the planet, because please, please, please make it look like we are on a business trip. Make it look like we are down there to handle business. And that post was not a business trip post. And to your point, if I'm Jack Vincent, or what's his name? Brian Vincent.
Yeah.
I got somebody monitoring JMU social media. I'm showing that post to my team in the locker room, because that was not good. What did you think about that post?
I'm scrolling through it now. So it's a picture of Amar Thomas, phone in his hand. Appears to be Justin Eaglin, no phone in his hand. Good for him. Terry Lockett, no phone in his hand. Maybe I'm diving way too deep into this. Then the last three players all have phones in their hands as they're warming up. That seems weird.
Well, I mean, listen, I didn't even notice the other pictures, to be honest. It was the initial picture on that post, and it just looked like we were down there on a leisurely trip, not a business trip.
Yeah, it looked like that.
I didn't love it. I did not love it. And Jack, you hit the nail on the head last week when you said that this could be one of the most, I think the word you used was maddening. This could be a maddening experience for us because of the style of football that ULM played. And if you could describe my mood on Saturday night while watching this game, it was maddening. My son heard some expletives from me that I don't know that he's ever heard before. I felt pretty bad about it. But let's start with the offense. And, man, it looked really good out of the gates. We got off to a fast start. We had an opening drive for a touchdown. And I'm telling you, whenever I have ever played football, whether it's college or NFL, if our opening drive goes for a touchdown and it looks too easy, then those are the games where we end up getting blown out. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, especially with the Giants, we would like script an opening drive. The opening drive would go exactly the way we scripted it, go down, score a touchdown. And then the rest of the game, it looks like we have no idea what we're doing. But if you look at that actual drive, that wasn't an easy drive. I mean, we actually didn't execute on offense. But how did you feel, I guess, after that opening drive and our chances to really just blow this team out?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at it, and again, I'm not rewatching this game, but from what I remember, Alonso was avoiding sacks at like an elite level on that first drive, and it ended with him running it in after I believe his jersey's like pulled on. He does some acrobatic stuff in the pocket to get out of it and go run for the touchdown.
Yeah.
In the
They
moment,
yeah. Sorry.
just in the moment, that's awesome. Like, great, good for you. But then, like looking back, you're that's just the least sustainable plays possible that you're running.
Yeah. I mean, we did not execute well on that drive. It's just that Alonzo made some plays. And right out the gates, you could see that we were committed to. I got to say, I did not love the offensive game plan because it looked like we wanted to turn Alonzo Barnett into Sluka, and it was going to be the quarterback, Wildcat show. I mean, even when we brought the freshman in, JC Evans, after the first play of the game when Alonzo got racked up, JC runs it right up the gut in a Wildcat, which I understand because we don't want to have him put the ball in the air in that situation. Were you surprised that it was JC Evans that came out for that play, though?
A little bit of me, I was like, oh, okay, all right. And then they ran that play, and I was like, I guess he's just hell-bent on doing a quarterback run in this scenario, and, like, you can't throw Dylan out there, so all right, I guess.
You can't throw Dylan out there. So, I mean, other than I think there was a nice pass to Yamir Knight on that first drive, but, I mean, Barnett actually should have been sacked on the play that he actually scored on. He just made a great play, which is why he is, the guy that he is. I think that ULM's coverage, I talked about this a little bit last week. They run a sort of a tricky defense. They switch things up a lot. They ran a lot of cover 2, a lot of cover 3. They disguised their coverages all game, and they brought a lot of pressure. And they do a really good job of disguising their pressures. And we did not do a great job up front. We didn't do a good job in the running back room, picking up some of these blocks. Poor Tyler Parody, man. I mean, he stuck his nose in there once and just got bulldozed. I don't know. I think it was a linebacker. But he did I mean, he slid in, he picked up the block and just got bulldozed. And Alonzo, I think, got sacked on that. So, I mean, it was just a game where our offense could not find a rhythm. The few times that we actually did catch them in man, though, we hit some big plays. A nice pass to Yamir Knight across the middle, and he got some yak. And then we got to pass over the top to Dollison, and it looked like they said, you know what, we're going to play cover 2 for the rest of the game. You're not going to get any of these over the top passes. But what did you think about the offense after that initial touchdown and just some of the decisions that were made in that offensive play calling?
It was maddening, like you said earlier. It was just like it felt like we had one pitch, they figured out that pitch, and then from there was no adjustment. Like the opening script seemed to be good. You get 10 points out of it. Even the third drive, you go 58 yards. There's a good throw to Dollison. You end up going for it on 4th down. I don't hate that decision. Be aggressive. 4th down play calling could be a whole nother conversation, a whole nother podcast we have. But I don't hate that. You turn over the ball on downs. But those opening 3 drives, you move the ball somewhat well. Your script was working. And then it seemed like Brian Vincent just, like you said, decided, okay, we're going to play cover 2. We're putting a top on this offense, and we're going to just let our defensive line beat up on their offensive line. That was our worst graded passing performance of the season per PFF, a grade of 55, which is below average. So, I mean, it showed on the film, it showed in the grading system, and I think it showed as the game went on that they just didn't have an answer for when a team goes, all right, you're not beating us with a deep ball. Good luck.
Yeah, the other thing they did too, which I thought was really smart for ULM, they put a spy on Barnett for the rest of the game. After he broke that big run, I mean, they spied him the entire game, and I don't know that he was able to scramble. And my guy got beat up a little bit. I mean, he's a tough kid. Because that game, I mean, they got into Alonzo a little bit, and it was good to see how tough he was because we need a tough person in that role. But I did not love to see, our quarterback just getting mollywopped over and over again in that game. I mean, the guy took some shots, including, of course, the shot that led to the fumble and the inevitable 82-yard touchdown return where their defender took it to the house. But that one, I mean, I think that's when I lost it. So, I mean, so that one really turned the tide of the game. Like, how did you feel in that moment when, the guys running down the field and now they're up? I think it was 14-10 at that point.
Yeah, that switched it from up 10-7. And I mean, it's just such it's at least a 10-point swing in their
10-point swing.
Because at least who knows how, if they score a touchdown there, it could be a 14-point swing. But watching the replay too, it looked like Barnett never really had the ball because it looked like the ball was coming out before he even got hit. And then he just got truck sticked and it just compounded it. And then there was no one there. And why would anyone be there? Because it's a run play with the quarterback. And then I sat there and I just thought that's going to be the game. Like the way this game's going, that feels like it's going to matter a whole lot because their offense really hadn't done much except for that one run up the middle that just looked like busted gap integrity or whatever it may have been. And other than that, the defense was holding their own. And you're just like, okay, their offense isn't going to score. Our offense isn't going to score. And we just gave them 7 points.
Yeah, that was a backbreaker. Now we come down and we at least drive the ball in 2 minutes, right? And actually get a field goal out of it. And so I felt so much better going into halftime at 14-13. But Jack, you said you didn't mind the go for it call on 4th and 4. I didn't love the call. Yeah,
I didn't mind the first one when it was, let me look at the drive chart.
It was 10-0 at the time. We had our defense had gotten them off the field. They punted. We drove down. We hit a long pass to Dollison. We got deep into their territory, I think just outside the 25. 4th and 4. We're not a great 4th down team. I mean, look at the numbers. We are terrible on 4th down. We haven't been great on 3rd down, but we're even worse on 4th down. And to me, in a game like this, where all these points are going to matter, and ultimately these 3 points ended up mattering because those 3 points win the game for us. And again, I'm not trying to play Monday morning quarterback. I don't want to play that game. I just didn't love the call in that moment because possessions count. We got an opportunity to get points on the board. Let's get the points. Let's go up 13-0. And I think that game has a totally different complexion if we kick the field goal there.
Yeah. Looking at that one, that first one early on in the game, I'm going to say I don't mind going for it because you're up 10. You feel like you have some of the momentum. Go for it. The one I had a problem with was actually in the 3rd quarter when we got down to their 37-yard line. And it was 4th and I believe I don't see it here, but 4th and 4-ish. And it was a long 4. And you've been pounding your chest about Noe having this massive leg. So that'd be about a 54-yard field goal. I would have loved to see him go out and try to do that. Because if you convert on that field goal, you're up in the game. And then everything changes from there on out.
Yeah, I don't know that he felt good that day. Like I mean, if you look at that first one that he hit from 48, that one, usually his balls are still rising as they're going through the goalpost. That one actually, would have only been good from 50. So, it just kind of felt like maybe he had said to the coaches, "Hey, here's my number today." And that's what that's what we did in the NFL. The kicker would come to our special teams coach and say, "Hey, feel pretty good from 52 and in today." Some weeks it might be, "Hey, I feel really good from 58 and in today." And so I just feel like maybe he wasn't good with it, but I hate these analytics and all this stuff, bro. I want to create a new drinking game. Like if you're watching a football game, every time the analyst, the broadcaster says analytics, you have to drink. Right. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of it.
Those announcers also did not do the world of analytics any favors because they just truly did not understand analytics.
Yeah. Maybe you can explain it to me. I mean, I'm with Dennis Green, like stats are for losers. I think analytics are for losers, bro. I really do. I don't buy any of that stuff.
On a quick aside of analytics, I think there's a time and place for them where if you're so married to the analytics, that's an issue. Like in baseball, when you're like, all right, this pitcher who's on a heater, the analytics say when he pitches his 80th pitch, he's 10% more likely to give up a home run. So we have to pull him before he gets to the 80th pitch. That's a little too crazy. You gotta feel the game. You gotta understand the game flow. But sometimes analytics, you know, I love analytics at times. Other times
Yeah.
I do hate them.
Well, Billy Bean, I got news for you. I mean, analytics are great in baseball, but football, man, I am done with the analytics. I really am. Now, I think the other thing too, when we look at our offense, and I said we've been really bad on third and fourth down. I think, as I look at the play calling on third and fourth down, I think at some point we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say that we are not a possession slant pass over the middle team. Like it was frustrating because we kept on third and fourth down. We were looking for the receiver to win in those situations, and we're running slant routes, and the ball might hit us in the hands, or it may be a contested pass. We're not really truly getting separation from the defender. And these third and fourth downs are going to waste. Even the 2-point conversion, the one time, we've gotten two 2-point conversions 2 weeks in a row when we didn't really need it. And then when we actually need it, the call was a slant, and it was just I don't think we've converted that slant pass on a third and fourth down this entire season. So I just didn't love that. And we don't have that true possession, get open. And even if I'm not open, I have super strong hands like an Elijah Surratt. We don't have that person right now, or at least I don't see it.
Hot take alert incoming.
Tell me.
I think we got two guys that can either become that, or one of them is that and just isn't being used in that role.
Who's that?
I think Taylor Thompson. I know he's not a wide receiver, but from the tight end spot, he's made clutch catches in back-to-back weeks. He had another, I think it was a 5-catch performance again. And in that final drive where they were driving down the field, he came up with some big catches and go-to moments. I would love to see him start getting targeted more and kind of be treated as that go-to guy. And I think Yamir Knight is going to be, by the end of the season, the best wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, listen, I love both of those ideas, but I don't know that either of them. I mean, we tried to throw the slant to Knight a couple of times, contest it. I just don't know that either of them is gonna get in the slot and make that play. It just too much to happen on a third and fourth down. Like I don't love it.
I think a slant there. I think slants are the bane of my existence, and this is again coming from a Seahawks fan who watched a slant take away Super Bowl 49 right from my fans' hands. But I just don't love a slant in a very condensed space regardless, even if that's Elijah Surratt. I mean, the cornerback was on him like a backpack, and you're expecting him to come down with that pass. You just had a really fun and creative Barnett get out of the way, direct snap Purdy right up the middle. Why don't you run something like that again? You also have a mobile quarterback. And again, not trying to, Monday morning quarterback it, but hindsight's 2020, and there's so many different ways after the fact where you're like, why didn't you just roll out your super mobile, super dynamic quarterback into the flat and either have him pass it or run in?
Yeah, I was hoping on that 2-point conversion, like give us a RPO and give Barnett an opportunity. Let's move the pocket and give him an opportunity to muscle it into the end zone if he had to. But just to throw the slant there. And by the way, Yamir won on a slant at Ball State, but he won because he made a miraculous catch. I still don't know how the ball got through there because the defender was all over him. And rather than running the slants, I mean, I talked about this in our initial episode, the first episode of To the House. I'd much rather see, that slot guy or even the tight end run some option routes, rather than the slant, like run the option route. And if you can get really good at that, you got Yamir Knight. If the defense is in man-to-man coverage, then now I got a two-way go, right? I can stem my route up on the defender, and I can go right or I can go left. And now the quarterback and I get in sync. And that's an automatic if they're in man. I mean, automatic. Nobody's going to cover Yamir Knight on an option route. they're going to cover him on a slant because they know, the tendency is they get in the slant and they run the freaking slant route. But if they're in a zone, then Yamir, you just run up and find the soft spot in the zone, and we're going to hit you for the first down. Same thing with the tight end. Like it's like the most fundamental basic play. And I think it's one that, we have the personnel to win on that kind of play right now. Again, not being critical, but right now I do not see that we have the personnel that's going to win on a slant route in that. And by the way, Barnett does not throw that ball particularly well either. I mean, he hit Tajee Hudson on a slant in the first half. It hit his hands. Objectively, I would say he should have caught it, and that would have picked up the first down. But that's also a pretty tough pass to catch in traffic, and it was pretty hot. So we just got to find a way to keep that momentum going and keep our offense on the field because, they chewed up the clock. Like it was maddening.
They know how to just squeeze time of possession.
Yeah. So I did think Barnett played a pretty good game. He just, he struggled with his accuracy at times. Especially some of those intermediate routes that we saw him execute so well last week. There were so many times where if he puts the ball in a better spot for the receiver, then the receiver actually has a chance to run with the ball afterwards. So there were a lot of times yesterday where, the receiver caught the ball, but he was in such a bad position that he either had to fall to catch the ball or got tackled immediately rather than being able to continue to run. But I did think that he played an adequate game. The fumble obviously was a big one that cost us 7 points. And, what are you going to do? I mean, it's just a tough offensive performance, man. I don't know what to say. It was tough. Now the defense, I thought, played well enough to win the game, right? The defense played well enough to win the game. I mean, if you take away the offensive touchdown or the touchdown that our offense gave up to ULM's defense, our defense held them to enough points to have won that football game. And the other thing is they got us in, great field position with a great interception by Jacob Thomas. We only turned that into 3 points. I think if we turned that into 7 points there, it's a totally different ball game. We started to take the life out of this team, but to only get 3 there, I thought was rough, which made it even more important, in my opinion. Once the defense got off the field on the very next drive, they punt it to us and we go down the field and we come away with no points. So, I mean, those 2 situations there are places where I think we could have helped the defense out a little bit by putting some more points on the board. But your overall thoughts on the defense, Jack?
Look, the defense allowed 2 touchdowns, held them to just 257 yards. The Dukes won the turnover battle by 1. That's a game your defense did everything they needed to do to win. They got the takeaways. They set up the offense in favorable field position, especially with the Jacob Thomas pick. They genuinely did enough to win. If you're the defense, you're sitting there and you're like, we gave up 257 yards. We weren't expecting them to come out and throw it that much, and we still slowed them down. The defense, I don't think, was the issue in this game, and I've seen a lot of fans kind of be like, the defense just can't get off the field. Look, this isn't the same defense from a year ago. It's not a 3-and-out defense that's going to just dominate you at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes they'll allow some yards, but like when you eat a bag of chips, those are empty calories. They allow empty yards that are going nowhere. So they only allowed 2 touchdowns. That you won the takeaway battle. They only had 257 total yards. It's all right. The defense is not the issue.
Yeah, I heard you say the empty yards line last week, and I'm literally in my car crying laughing because I thought it was a perfect description for what this defense does. I will disagree a little bit on the empty yards because ULM's player of the game was their punter.
Yeah.
And so when you give up those kind of yards, you let their offense get into plus territory. Now they play the field position game. Right. So even though they didn't even cross our 40 for like the first, 18, 19 minutes of the game, but they were able to punt and pin us deep, which ultimately set up a couple of their scores. And so I would love to see some more 3-and-outs, but to your point, we pin our ears back and we do not let teams in the end zone. And that's one of the things that I think Monroe does on their defense. They also don't let people in the end zone outside of, I guess, a 52-point explosion by the number one team at the time, which was Texas. But to your point, Armenta gets the start, and he is a New Mexico transfer, which means he was at New Mexico with head coach Bryant Vincent. And so he knew this offense so much better than General Booty. I mean, this offense looked so much better under Armenta than it did under General Booty. And I think he played a great game. He is truly the definition of a game manager. He didn't do anything outrageous to beat us, but here's what he did do. Number one, he had great pocket presence. I think we got one sack against him, and he almost got out of that sack, if not for a great play by Kari Mans, right, to actually get him on the ground. Thought we were going to get a horse collar call on that, but we didn't. He only took one sack, right? He also made some really good decisions and just kept a lot of their drives going. So on third downs, when we thought maybe we had him, we dialed up some pressure. This guy was getting passes off and completing passes. And other than the pass to Jacob Thomas, I thought he played a phenomenal game. But this was a totally different offense with him versus Booty.
And shout out to our Armenta, because his first or second throw as the starter, it goes right to Jacob Thomas. And that is such a moment for this guy who's had 13 career attempts. He could have turtled and he could have been like, all right, it was fun. Good job, guys. That could really rattle a kid. Instead, he then finishes the game 17 of 29, 147 yards and a touchdown after that interception. Not bad. Yeah. Not great, not bad. Enough to win.
The kid played a game, and I'm going to tell you something. If he can play like that all year, they're going to win some ball games because their defense is legit. I don't care what anybody says. That was a legitimate defense. And if you watch the first half of the Texas game, even, they got after Texas. I mean, they turned over Texas twice, right? I think they intercepted Arch Manning twice in that game in the first half. So, I mean, it kind of got out of hand and got away from them in the second half of that game. But I mean, this is a legitimate defense. And if Armenta can actually be an effective game manager, I will get my wish, because ULM will probably have to come to the Mullet for the Sun Belt Championship game. How does it work? I mean, do they automatically get the home game because they beat us head to head, or is it based on whoever has the best record?
Best record. But if it's a tie,
it goes to the head to head.
I think it would probably go to the head to head.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I hope in some way they can win the Sun Belt West with 2 losses. We win the Sun Belt East with 1 loss. I would love another crack at this ULM team. And I know our players would too, just because that coach was talking a little smack. Now, I think the other thing about their offense, we came out in this game expecting a heavy dose of run, and they came out slinging the ball around. And so I do think our defense was caught off guard a little bit by how much they were actually throwing the ball. And it wasn't any flashy passes. I think he averaged about 5.3 yards a pass, right, for completions. It was just these passes that kept drives alive. And so it was just an interesting dichotomy to watch what they did there, especially considering that they didn't snap the ball on offense. I don't know if you noticed this. Every time they snapped the ball on offense, there was less than 5 seconds on the play clock. I mean, that game flew by when they had the ball.
They don't want the other team to touch the ball.
Yeah, it was tough, man. So, I mean, listen, I thought that it was a tough game. I don't want to belabor the point. It was definitely a game that we should have won. But listen, this is an any given Saturday type of league. And I do think that we have quite possibly the best coaching staff to lead us through this adversity. I do believe that Coach Bob Chesney and the entire staff, they are going to use this as motivation, and they better, because as we know, we got a game in 4 days. What is it? Sunday. We got a game on Thursday night. So there's no time to feel sorry for yourself. There's no time to really even dwell on this game. We've got to move on to Coastal Carolina. And Jack, this is one that's pretty exciting. Are you going to the Thursday night game?
No, I got to cover some stuff in ESPN Richmond, so I'll be watching from afar, unfortunately.
Humble brag. I like the low key flex right there, right? No, I got to do some stuff for. So I unfortunately cannot go as well. I have a board meeting for a nonprofit that I'm on, and so I thought about ditching it, but I can't ditch it because I'm the chair of the board, right? But as I think about some of my big thoughts when we go to this Coastal Carolina game. Coastal is 4-1. Their only loss was to UVA. And in that game, it wasn't close. The final score kind of makes it looks like it was sort of a manageable game. But it wasn't close. UVA blew Coastal out. And they played Coastal in Conway, South Carolina. And Jack, I'm going to go back to something we talked about last week because I forgot to make this point when we talked about expanding the mullet, expanding Bridgeforth. I do think that is the case for expansion, making it more uniform, making that appearance look less like JV on that short side. I think we could get, a Power 5 or Power 4 team to actually do a home and home with us. Because UVA going to freaking Coastal, and Virginia Tech's gone down to ODU a couple of times. App State has hosted Miami and North Carolina. That is your case for expansion of Bridgeforth, right?
Maybe. I still love that JV side, man. I love that JV side.
I know you do. All right. I do actually want to go back for a second. We talked about the penalties. I do think on the previous game, and then we'll move to Coastal. Because I did want to ask you this. So we had a ton of penalties in that game. It seemed like every time we had a drive going, we'd shoot ourselves in the foot. We have a holding or a false start. We had so many false starts, and they were playing music. And by the way, you could hear it because there was no crowd noise. In fact, I heard one time the crowd was, it was so quiet there because there was nobody there. I think there was 500 people there. But there was one time where Vincent calls a timeout, and I could hear him on the broadcast say timeout. Like that's how few people were actually in that stadium. But they were playing music in our cadence. Like Alonza is in his cadence, and they're still playing music on the loudspeakers. There were also times where their band was also still playing while we were in our cadence. Is that allowed?
If I'm not mistaken, from my time, both in high school marching band and college marching band, you have to stop at the snap. I believe you can play up to the snap, but you cannot play once the ball is in play.
All right. Well, maybe it's an etiquette thing because, when we were at Chapel Hill, I sat right next to the band and I'm watching the band, and literally every time their quarterback went into his cadence, the band director, what do you call the guy? The orchestrator guy?
Drum major?
Yeah, the drum major. He's like, cut, right? Right before he goes into his cadence. So maybe it's etiquette, and maybe they just have poor etiquette down there, or maybe because there's nobody at the game, that was their way of simulating some sort of crowd noise. So anyway, thanks for clearing that up for me. I had no idea. But I just would have guessed that would not be allowed.
Persons subject to the rules, including bands, shall not create any noise that prohibits a team from hearing its signals.
So that sounds like before your cadence.
Maybe even the cadence, because it says to assist with compliance, consider the following procedures. Have the bands, I like how we're diving into the rules of marching band now. Have the band stop playing from the time the offense breaks the huddle until the ball is snapped.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Well,
so
again, there were several times where if you listen to the broadcast, they were playing and there was music coming in from the loudspeaker.
I will say that's a rule in marching band that you push the limit of. You wait until you get the warning from the referee, which sometimes they'll say over the loudspeakers. Sometimes they'll kind of just let you know on the side, like, hey, you're overplaying by a few seconds, like, calm it down.
Yeah.
And if that warning never comes, you never stop.
Yeah. Well, listen, good on them, man. They had some gamesmanship. They outgamed us and they went out and hit us in the mouth and they won the game. So ULM deserved that win. Definitely not trying to take anything away from them. I actually really wish them well. Like, I mean, I love the turnaround story, the fact that they're 4-1, best start since 1993. And they are calling this the biggest win in program history. And this team beat Alabama in like 2007. So congratulations, JMU fans. You are everybody's, hopes, wishes, and aspirations for a season victory. I mean, that's a big thing. So let's go back to Coastal for a second. So obviously, again, Coastal 4-1, only lost to UVA. They're coming off a win this past week to the best 1-4 team in the country, Old Dominion, which I can't understand why they're 1-4. They are actually a really good football team. Have you watched any ODU games this year, Jack?
I was high on them coming into this season. I'm still high on them. I think they're good, and I think that's going to be a hell of a game when JMU plays at ODU in November.
It's going to be brutal. I think ODU somehow turns it around and finish the season bowl eligible. But shout out to them. Coastal went out and played a pretty good game. We'll get into that game in a second. Their other wins, though, are against Jacksonville State, which I think everyone sort of assumed was one of the better teams in Conference USA. Not sure that means a whole lot, but who knows? They also beat FCS William and Mary, and then they beat Temple, right? Who, is kind of the artist formerly known as Vanderbilt, but in the American, right? Now, what's interesting is in this game, we are coming into this game after beating them 47-7 in 2022, and then beating them 56-14 last year at their place. So I am telling you, Jay Feasy, this Coastal Carolina team is going to come into our house on Thursday on national television, knowing that we have beaten them 103-21 over the last 2 years. For the people doing math at home, they're going to be fired up. I can guarantee you they had this game circled on their calendars. So what are your overall thoughts, I guess, on Coastal Carolina coming into the Mullet on Thursday and just their, I guess, desire and drive to come out and make a statement?
I truly hope the reason JMU lost to ULM was because they were solely focused on Coastal Carolina and just taking it to the Chanticleers. I do hope, I think this has the makings for one of the better Thursday night games we're going to see all season in the Sun Belt. Because like you said, the Chanticleers are coming in with revenge on their mind. They want to punch us in the mouth. They want to give us everything we got. It's going to be very telling how Coach Chesney is as a coach for how JMU responds to that loss to ULM. If they come out flat and look disinterested, which I highly doubt they will, but I think that's very telling on how he was able to get them motivated for this week. And that's a huge part, in my opinion, for being a head coach at this level. I fully expect Chesney will have them all rallied together, bought in, and want to go out there and punch Coastal metaphorically and probably also literally in the mouth. And it's going to make for a great Thursday night atmosphere.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Now, and I'm not only interested to see how our team responds, because I know the message that the coaches are giving, right? I mean, I think Chesney does a fantastic job of staying positive, optimistic, but also challenging the players around the adversity piece. And I feel like he's done a really good job of putting them in adverse situations all year so that they can, actually be prepared for this situation. I'm more interested to see how our fans react. Honestly, like I mean, it's a Thursday night game. Everybody's got work. I know that people would be fired up to make the trip to the Berg on a Thursday night to pack the stadium for a 5-0 JMU team. I don't know if going down to Monroe, a team that most people didn't have on their bingo card coming into this season as a loss for the Dukes, how excited everybody's going to be to watch this team come back to Harrisonburg. But I'm going to do my own Bryant Vincent impersonation here. Please, we need the city, we need the alums, we need everybody who can please come out and support the Dukes on Thursday night. It's on national television, and it is a big game because they're 4-1, we're 4-1, and I do believe that the entire trajectory of the rest of the season sort of hinges on this game. And if we can go out and get a W, then we've got the mini bye, and then we go back into the rest of the Sun Belt play. Now, if we think about the Shants on offense, obviously Ethan Vasco is their leader. He's their quarterback. He's an experienced quarterback. I think he unfortunately has played against us twice. So he's attributed to, the beatdown that we've put on them over the last couple of years because Grayson McCall was hurt both times we've played the Shants. But Vasco is, he's taken that experience and he's actually having a really good season this year. He's actually even also led the team in rushing a couple of times this year. So he's sort of a dual threat quarterback. And if you look at them on offense right now, they're way more balanced on offense than they were under him a year ago. Last year, he was more of a run threat. I think this year he's more of a pass and run quarterback. So I guess what are your overall thoughts on Vasco and just their offensive prowess over in Conway?
Yeah, they're doing a good job. I believe now under second year head coach Tim Beck, kind of learning the system a little bit more. I think last year was a bit of a feeling out process for both the coach and the players there. But Vasco, he won that quarterback competition. They brought in a Michigan State transfer who couldn't win it. So they quote unquote incumbent, the old guy who's been in the room for a few years, sounds similar to what's happened to JMU as well, beats out the Power 4 transfer. And he's played exceptionally well. The Coastal Carolina offense is electric through the air. They rank 16th in the nation in expected points added per pass. You knew it's 51 minutes into the podcast, but we finally get our EPA drop in there. So they're in a very, very, very efficient passing attack, and they do a lot of their damage on early downs. On first and second down, they're setting themselves up for advantageous third downs. They actually rank 29th in the nation in average third down distances. They average a 3rd and 6, where JMU averages a 3rd and 8.
Wow. Yeah, and I think part of that is because they like to also run the ball. So although Vasco's thrown for 1,100 yards in 5 games, the other thing that I think helps them out a lot on these, averaging only 3rd and 6 is that he's only been sacked 2 times this season. Two times that kid has been sacked. He's got really good pocket presence. He's really hard to get on the ground. And if we juxtapose that against Barnett, who is also a running quarterback, I'd say more of a threat to run the ball than Vasco. Barnett's been sacked 13 times this season. So 2 times versus 13 times. And so they are averaging 38.4 yards per game. They're averaging 197 yards rushing each game. And they're also throwing the ball at 241 yards passing per game. And they even dialed up a trick flea flicker last week against ODU. So there might be a chance that we'll see some sort of flea flicker. So I think that one of the keys to us beating them this week, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is that we've got to bring some pressure. First off, we've got to stop the run. They are committed to the run. If we can keep them in sort of 3rd and throw situations and then find a way to make a play on like a longer 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, then I think we're in business. If we let them operate and get to that comfortable zone that you just talked about, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6, it's also going to be another long day for us. And they do a really good job of scoring touchdowns. So again, 38.4 points per game is nothing to sneeze at. Now, if we transition over to their defense for a second, They play a lot of cover too. And so again, we're going to see some of the same looks that we saw in this past week, where maybe we don't have an opportunity to take the top off the defense. Maybe what will hopefully work into the game plan, or maybe some post routes to split those two safeties high. And I think that is a throw that AB3 can absolutely make. And I think it's a catch that, Dollison and Ross can make downfield. Now, the other thing I think is when they bring pressure, they do play man. So if AB3 in his pregame checks or pre-snap reads can figure out when the pressure's coming, where the pressure is coming from, because I did not see that they do a really good job of hiding their pressures. If he can figure that out pre-snap and then make some plays, especially when they're going to man coverage, I do think that's going to be a huge opportunity for us. What are your thoughts on their defense, though, Jack? Have you watched them play? Anybody stand out on their defense to you? Because I didn't really see any standout performers there.
I haven't watched a ton of Coastal this season, but with PFF and all of these advanced stats I have right at my fingertips, I can sound really smart when I talk about it. Clev Lubin, their edge defender, is their highest rated defender. He is an exceptional pass rusher, and it seems to be that's what they really use him on. He's taken 98 snaps. 15 of them have been for pressures. He's pressured the quarterback 15 times this season, resulting in 1 sack, 2 hits, 12 hurries, a 91.7 pass rush grade, which is almost as good as it can get in the Sun Belt. Might be the best pass rush grade in the entire Sun Belt. They have what seems to be pretty solid guys overall, and I'm kind of worried with a cover 2 defense how Dean Kennedy and how Alonzo Barnett go about scheming that, because it seems like this has been the first time that they've been there's been kind of a wrench. Something has messed up. There's a wrench in their gears. It's not going the way it was supposed to be going, and it just came up on Saturday. And now you have a short week to try and figure it out against what is a better defense who runs a similar style. Are they staying up until 3, 4 a.m. trying to diagnose this and figure this out? Like, it's going to be really interesting, because I'm getting flashbacks to the Mike McDaniel-led Miami Dolphins when he figures out this motion with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And now this season, they're one of the worst offenses in the league because defenses just figured it out and they have no changeup. I'm not ready to hit the panic button just yet, but I am worried that they're struggling to find a changeup right now.
Yeah, I don't know that this is a better team on defense. I would tell you from my vantage point that ULM's defense is far and above a much tougher defense, especially up front, especially on the run, than I think this Coastal Carolina team is. I mean, Coastal is susceptible to the run game. They've given up a lot of yards, rushing yards. I think they gave up over like 350 yards to UVA on the ground. And a lot of that were chunk yards by their quarterback, Calandria. So they are absolutely susceptible to that. And I think that AB3 using his legs, not necessarily on the designed, I'm going to send my quarterback up the A gap kind of runs. I'm not a fan of that, but maybe on some of those plays where he can extend drives, use his legs, and then maybe still look downfield and find some receivers wide open. I mean, I think that's where we start to win. I also think that George Pettaway is going to have a great game in this game, because I'm telling you, this defense is susceptible to some big running plays. If you watch the ODU game, ODU broke off some 8, 9, 10-yard plays that were maybe a block away, and a better athlete like a George Pettaway could have taken some of those plays to the house. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what our running game can do against this defense. I truly believe we're going to get off our passing game, but if our running game, if we can go in and run the ball against this team, do our own version of ULM and control the clock and time of possession, I think we win this game by a couple of scores. Now,
sorry, go ahead.
No. I was done. I'm off my soapbox for now.
I would love to see Pettaway used more. Give me more Wayne Knight. He had 1 rush for 16 yards and looked great. And please, who do I have to talk to? Who do I have to beg to give me Joby Mallory?
Yeah, you want Joby. You're gonna make a "We want Joby" sign if game day comes to Harrisonburg.
Maybe.
You know, it is interesting though. Tyler Purdy is probably our best short yardage running back. And it's I think based on what I said, a few episodes ago, like the guy has great forward shoulder lean. He always falls forward. And if we got 3rd and 1, I'm giving it to Purdy. More than anybody else. I think George Pettaway does a pretty good job, but he's a very patient runner. If you watch him, he takes the handoff and he's kind of trying to find his lanes. He's our big play home run guy, right? He's Shady McCoy because Shady McCoy did the exact same thing. But Purdy is take the handoff, go downfield. I think Wayne Knight, I think to your point, I think he could use a couple of more touches because every time he touches the ball, he breaks off a pretty good run. So I really like him in the backfield. But I think this week will be a big week for our running back room. Those guys are absolutely going to make some plays. But I'm going to call it Dukes win. Dukes get back on top this week in a sold-out Bridgeforth on national television. Neither you nor me will be there, Jack. But I think the Dukes are going to bring it home in the mullet. What do you think?
They got to. I think is it too early to say this is a must-win game?
Yeah, man. I think that if your goal is to win the Sun Belt East, this is a must-win game. And, Coach Bob Chesney, I called him, Kaiser Sose a couple of weeks ago. I need the guy to be freaking Ted Lasso. And this team, they need to be goldfish. Goldfish have a very short memory, right? Ted Lasso. So let's forget about that ULM game. Let's take the lessons, right? You don't lose, you either win or you learn. And there are some things that hopefully we learned in that game that are going to help us to go forward for the rest of the season, right? I mean, again, I was so excited that Bennett talked about this last week on the sports news, on the JMU Sports News podcast. I think we over romanticized the Cignetti years. I mean, listen, Cignetti and staff laid an egg down in Georgia Southern in 2022, and we started the season 5-0, and then we lost 3 in a row. I don't know if you remember that, right?
Oh yeah.
But everybody, I mean, in their minds, like it was all glorious and all good all the time. Last year, we go 10-0, and we're at home in front of a sold-out, electric, excited ESPN College Game Day crowd, and we absolutely lay an egg, and somehow the team wakes up in the 4th quarter and starts playing football. It was not all roses. This is a long season. It's called a season for a reason, right? We are going to have some adversity. I'm excited to see how this team bounces back on Thursday night. All right. You know what time it is, Jack. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis?
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right, this week's What You Talking About, Willis, comes from us from none other than the man himself, Deion Coach Prime Sanders. And Deion was saying that the media is biased against the University of Colorado and his football program. He said the fact that we're still not ranked is just media bias. If we were any other program, we'd be top 5 with wins against Colorado State, UCF, and the best quality loss in the country, Nebraska. All right, Coach Prime, what you talking about, Willis? First off, man, like you guys are in the Big 12, so you are a Power 4 team. The second thing is, though, and this is where the What You Talking About, Willis comes into play, the media loves you. What are you talking about? The media is biased against you. Dude, you are a ratings machine. There's so much media coverage around you and your recruiting and your program. I think if you look at the media coverage that Coach Prime gets, like the guy is on television and his program is being talked about nonstop. So I do not get where he says they'd be ranked if it wasn't for media bias. And last year, if you remember, they couldn't wait to put you guys in the top 25. So get in line. There's a bunch of other 4-1 and 5-1 teams that also believe they should be ranked and also believe that, they have a pretty good loss on their record. But what you talking about, Willis, man? The media loves you guys. Wait, what do you think, Jack? Am I being hard on Coach Prime right now?
No, you can be as hard as you want on Coach Prime. I think he is. He says a lot of stuff. He brings attention to Colorado, not always for the right reasons. This is another time he's bringing attention for not the right reasons.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, man. You get so much coverage. And I love the fact that he wants his team to think it's us against the world kind of thing in the locker room. But that doesn't play with us, man. We know that the media loves you and they would want nothing more than to have Colorado in that top 25. All right. Well, you know what time it is, Jack. It's time for us to take it to the house. And Jack, as we prepare for this Thursday night showdown with Coastal Carolina, I'm reminded of the classic press conference with their former coach, David Bennett, that went viral back in 2007. So,
trying to get our two boys ready to carry them to golf tournament before practice, right? 12 cats live across the road. Our door's open. Screen's broke. We need to get a new screen door, but the screen's broke, so you can come in through the screen, but you can't get back out of it. I turn and look, there's a little kitty cat in our kitchen. So I said, what are you doing in here, little kitty cat? By that time, the cat turns, tries to get back out. That screen won't go that way. Cat starts going, meow, all crazy. And I told our players, we need more dogs. Bo's barking in the back. I have to go shut Bo up. Mel's like, what's going on? I said, there's a cat in the house. Cat in the house? I said, yeah, there's a cat in the house. So I told our players, I tried to let it out the front door. Meow, meow, the cat's still going crazy in there. And I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
I love that. We need more dogs. We don't need no cats. Now, often when referencing a player, we'll call them a dog, or we'll say he's got that dog in him. We say it a lot on this podcast network, but I believe this description is probably overused and misappropriated at times. And this week of all weeks, I think it's a great time for us to ask, what does it really mean to be a dog? What does it really mean to have that dog in you? For me, a dog is someone who has an unwavering pursuit of their goals. And they approach it with passionate, sometimes reckless abandon. So when someone has that dog in them, they have a relentless drive to succeed. Adversity and obstacles be damned. For some athletes, that dog stems from a desire to create financial prosperity for themselves and their families. My friends and I often joke that our kids have no dog in them because they've grown up with crown molding, granite countertops, name brand cereal, and unlimited snacks. All things that eluded me in childhood. But thankfully, I had that dog in me, and now my children are the benefactors. I've always heard it said that success is never owned, only rented, and the rent is due every day. It's important to remember that in life, like in sports, there's always someone looking to take your spot. Not that people are vindictive and looking to stab you in the back. Maybe some are, but dogs operate with this mentality, right? Never satisfied, never complacent, never allowing themselves to be lured into the magical, mythical place called the comfort zone. I hear it's a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. So if we carry this mentality with us throughout life, we'll be better at our jobs. We'll be better spouses, better friends, better teammates, and we'll build better teams. Maybe with their success over the last couple of weeks, the Dukes had lost their way a bit. Maybe they forgot the rent was due again. But one thing is for sure, Thursday night in Bridgeford, we'll find out who the real dogs are. Adversity and obstacles be damned. All right, JMU Nation, we have taken it to the house. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. I know it's hard to listen to the To the House podcast after a big loss like we had at ULM, but I truly believe the Dukes are going to get on the right track. Jack, why don't you tell the people how they can find and follow To the House and the JMU Sports News Network.
You can follow on Twitter and Instagram at JMU to the house. Hopefully some happy things we're sharing over there after a win on Thursday against the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. And you can subscribe wherever you find your podcast to the JMU Sports News Network. You can find To the House, drops every Monday night. And you can find the JMU Sports News podcast, drops every middle of the week. And you can subscribe on YouTube to the JMU Sports News Network as well.
Let's go, man. I love it. You're so good at that. Let's pack Bridgeforth on Thursday night. Let's get this dub. Let's take it to the house. Go Dukes.
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.